Western sanctions are continuing to weigh on the Russian economy, with the country defaulting on its foreign debt after attempting to pay it down in rubles. This comes just days after S&P downgraded its assessment to repay its foreign debt. And Brian, worth noting, there is a 30-day grace period, but Russia already threatening to take legal action here.
Yeah, well, we know that all of the Western sanctions on Russia have greatly impaired the country's ability to repay its debt. But we need to kind of take a look at the timeline here just to kind of keep track of exactly what's going on here. Again, all this concerns Russia's ability to repay the government debt or Russian bonds that people around the world buy. So there are a number of foreign bondholders that had signed on for foreign currency issued debt. So on April 4th, there were payments due on U.S. dollar denominated Russian bonds. And this is important for a second. I'll just leave that there for now. But there's a 30-day grace period on how the Russian government can kind of make those payments whole. Now, they made those payments on time, but apparently they paid these bondholders in Russian rubles instead of U.S. dollars. So they have a few weeks to get that straight, maybe fix that and pay them in U.S. dollars. But keep in mind, there's that May 25th date that's coming up at the end of next month, in which case the U.S. government is no longer going to allow any American bondholders to take any sort of Russian payments at all. So this is a cascading effect, and you're already seeing the ratings agencies say, look, we don't feel confident in Russia's ability to make these payments. Even those that were paid in rubles, they would not be able to convert those currencies into U.S. dollars. So the S&P Global Ratings team turning this into a selective default on Russia. Keep in mind, the other agencies have actually technically suspended further coverage because of EU sanctions on the agencies themselves. But again, something very close to watch here because Russia might not be able to pay its bills in the coming months.
Yeah. And, Brian, what's interesting is we've been watching so much the impact of Western sanctions on the Russian economy, but the Ukrainian economy also struggling as well. We saw the World Bank come out and say that the Ukrainian economy could shrink by as much as 45% this year. We saw that interview in the Financial Times today with the finance minister. They're saying we need immediate financial relief. Yes, we need weapons. Yes, we need arms here to help fight against Russia in this next phase of the war. But in addition to that, they are also hurting financially as well. And so it's interesting to see the trajectory of these two economies that are caught in this war.
Yeah, and we have to remember the ruble dynamics here. I'm not going to go into a full-on Yahoo U because our viewers would probably fall asleep. But the point here is that the U.S. economy, the U.S. Treasury, a number of other countries as well have effectively sanctioned the Russian central bank and the ability for them to access any sort of foreign reserves that they have. Now, keep in mind, the Russian ruble, when they defend it against, let's say, for example, short selling, they need to rely on other baskets of currencies like the U.S. dollar to make sure that they can keep the value of their own domestic currency afloat. And that's why you saw the Russian ruble devaluate so much when the U.S. Treasury first announced sanctions on the Russian central bank. Now, the Russian ruble has recovered quite a lot since then. That's because of internal capital controls that Russia has imposed. But of course, the question is, how long can they continue to do that? Because they've already had to burn through a lot of the U.S. dollars and other reserves that they had on their books to begin with. So we don't know the extent to which they've relied on that because the reporting of it has been a bit thinner than it was before the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But look, at the end of the day, this is all about the ability to defend your currency. When we talk about the Russian government paying their bondholders in a currency that's not the U.S. dollar as they were promised, this is a big deal. This is like if you Venmo requested me, Akiko, and instead of paying you back in the dollars that you had asked for, I just gave you a bunch of Turkish lira or Zimbabwe dollars or something like that. I couldn't imagine you being particularly happy about that.
Well, and the bottom line here, though, is that these sanctions were intended to pressure Vladimir Putin to basically think twice about this next phase of the war. That hasn't had that intended effect. He's made it pretty clear that he is continuing with what has been the initial mission for Russia and not necessarily backing down as they really refocus on the Donbas region. So the Russian economy is certainly struggling, but that hasn't necessarily had an effect to curb Vladimir Putin from his military action.